Greetings and salutations. This is I, your humble host, Captain Lunar, bringing you another wonderful Patreon request from Patreon supporter Thomas Hibbert, who comes to us today with a very interesting what-if scenario. As you can tell by the title, what if Queen Angela was She-Ra? Now, we begin this story with Angela coming across the sword while looking for Glimmer. Now, Glimmer is one to be fairly rebellious, as we all know. However, upon learning that Glimmer had been missing for quite a few hours, Queen Angela grew worried and began to search for her daughter. However, she soon found herself in a familiar forest, part of the forest near the Fright Zone, which, of course, laid the Sword of Protection. Now, Queen Angela lifted it up and actually found that she could feel something, a power coursing through it. As almost instinctually, the words were echoed in her head, "For the honor of Grayskull." And Queen Angela became She-Ra. Now, obviously she had heard legends of She-Ra, but the thing is, she was not quite expecting this. So, when she does manage to save Adora, Glimmer, and Bo from the horde attack that was happening around the village, a small village, Adora is still on the fence of leaving the horde, and honestly, this just kind of pushes her back into the horde, essentially, for a bit, but she does start having her eyes open more because of her experiences with Bo and Glimmer, essentially thinking maybe the horde isn't right, which she largely does keep to herself, mostly because she doesn't really want to leave Catra. However, with Queen Angela, her power, she was already fairly powerful, but with the power of Grayskull, she has essentially just completely become a lot stronger than she ever thought it was possible for her to become. And she starts going more on the proactive side. Like, okay, she has power now, and she's going to use it to really dominate the horde, to push them back, everything. Essentially, she's become a lot more extreme in her methods, even more so than most would be comfortable with. Like, most potential allies are kind of turned off by it. Like, hey, you're just, like, she is going in, she is essentially one-woman armying, like, horde outposts, and it's honestly, essentially, picture someone who has a reason to really, really hate the horde, taking them on, because, you know, the horde is the reason her husband is gone, the reason why her daughter grew up without her father. So, yeah, Angela is just completely just decimating horde forces left and right. And the thing is, Glimmer starts to actually be legitimately worried about her mother. Like, she becomes incredibly worried, mostly because, like, you know, this is not my mom. You know, my mom would never go this far with it. You know, she would never. So yeah, Glimmer actually does something she didn't think she would ever do, and she actually sneaks back into the into the Fright Zone to essentially seek Adora's help. It's like, hey, look, I know we got to you a little bit before, and we really need you to help. We really need your help. You know, because she is absolutely terrified of the possibility that her mother could really go crazy with the power. Now, that's not to say Angela is evil in this, or is going evil, but the thing is, she, for the first time, has the power to really just fight the Horde on their level. And it's not always a good thing when you can... And yeah, that's not always a good thing, especially when you have someone that's lost what Angela has lost. So, yeah. Well, what would happen is Adora actually does agree, like, okay, look, even if I don't think you're 100% right about the Horde, this is something that would benefit the Horde to have her taken down. I promise you, basically Adora is more willing to work with this because, again, she has had that doubt planted in her head, and she's really just going off on, like, you know what, this is the right thing to do. Regardless of what happens with the Horde or anything afterward, they need to essentially break through to Angela. Now, during this time, while Angela is scouting around, because she's realized, okay, that Glimmer is gone at the moment, she goes looking for her again, and ends up running into Madame Raz, who essentially pretty much tells her, yeah, you were never meant to hold that sword. You were never meant to wield the power of She-Ra. And, Angela says she's not listening, really, at that point, because, like, oh, of course I was. I found that I'm the queen. But Madame Raz is essentially, yes, you're a queen, which means you're meant to lead. She-Ra is meant to be a warrior and a protector, but the thing is, you're not protecting people anymore. Essentially, in her own Madame Razzie words, she pretty much makes it clear that Angela has been doing more harm than good with the power of Grayskull. So, it finally comes down to where Hordak has finally had enough, and realizing that we have the Queen Angela's daughter here. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold her hostage, and we're going to force this She-Ra into coming to us. And essentially, the Hordak's plan is essentially, we're just going to lay down the firepower. We're going to essentially overwhelm her as much as possible. And, of course, naturally, Angela does end up getting there, finally. But what Madame Raz said did really stick with her in her head. So what would happen next is, the plan works. Angela is overwhelmed because essentially it's just everything being thrown at her. As even Catra, though, Catra's just like, it's war. We're in the, we're actually getting what we want, Adora. Like, if we do this, we can do this bit. But Adora is like, no, not like this. Not like this. So, finally, Angela ends up losing the sword during the fight, and, Hordak is about to just, like, finish her off, but Adora does grab the sword, and essentially, what would happen is, Adora ends up saying the words, and becoming She-Ra herself, and defends, Glimmer and Bow, and of course, Angela, and gets them out of there, as Catra's like, what are you doing? Like, Catra essentially, during this whole time, Adora has been kind of trying to get at Catra, like, okay, to think about what they're doing, because, again, that doubt had been planted in Adora, even if she went back to the Horde. And eventually, at this point, Catra's, you know what, I don't agree with, I'll follow Adora. Because, basically at this point, Adora has been able to kind of work into Catra's head just a little bit more. So essentially, Catra's like, hey, I'm not here for you, I'm here for Adora. So essentially, Catra's more of the aloof ally at this point. But, Angela does allow Adora to keep the sword, because Adora was wielding it even easier than Angela was. which really just kind of showcases that, yeah, Madame Razz was right. She was not meant for this. So things essentially start going with, Angela realizes that Adora is willing to turn her back on what she was raised to do just because there was someone in trouble, someone innocent that needed help. And that tells Angela that, yeah, she really is the proper She-Ra. So yeah, what follows is, Catra in this turn of events is now an aloof ally of Bright Moon, even though, again, she's there for Adora because she had managed to like work on her enough to where she would defect. So yeah. But anyway, this was a really fun one to do. I want to thank Thomas Hibbert for the request, and yeah, I will. Yeah, and again, if anyone else would like a Patreon request, the link to Patreon is in the description. So yeah, please check it out if you like. This has been Captain Lunar